You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And it is your boy, Evan Closky.
Back again, and we appreciate it. We are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays. You can also find us on X and Instagram at Locked On Rays and email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. We are pleased to be joined by Evan Closky, sports director for Channel 10 WTSP. Evan, how many spring training games have you made it to yet?
Haven't made it to any. Unfortunately, with around this time, David, who I work with, we try to bob and weave through PTO because we're coming off the Buck season and the Bolts playoffs, which is up in the air right now, but currently they're in. But we got to prepare for the Bolts playoff run as well, which could be a quick 2 weeks, or it could be 2.5 months. So, that begins up in middle April. So what ends up happening is both of us, I take off a little portion of time, he takes off a portion of time, I take off, and we're a two-man department. So by the time it's all said and done, 3.5 weeks have gone by, and we've worked together once. So long story short, have not been to a spring training game, but thanks to the Rays and Chris Tilley, shout out to him, great photographer, former WTSPer. He shoots the non-TV feed games, so I do get to see all that stuff, and I do love those non-TV feed games. Selfishly, on top of the TV games as well, because then I also get to hear more post-game reaction from Kevin Cash and the players. The only ones I don't like are the ones like what is now yesterday, where it's on Nesson, and we don't get Chris Tilley, and we don't get Valley Sports Sun, and all of a sudden we're kind of just left watching the box score and highlights. It's sometimes better that way because then I don't get attached to the spring training stats, and I need to remind myself of that spring training, who cares in the grand scheme of things.
It's our motto now. Besides parking fees, it's spring training stats do not matter. Do not make evidence, surrounding that. I remember, I think it was 2019. Tyler Glasnow had a 13.8 ERA, and you're like, oh, that's gonna be ugly. And then boom, the dude was the front runner for the Cy Young until he got hurt. So yeah,
you got to always, and just what are the Rays 2-7 now? Just got to always remember with a couple of ties. Just always remember they're working on things. Mm-hmm. So you don't know exactly what they're working on, but this is the time to tinker because you got to figure out whether you can deploy it in the regular season or not. So, for example, Pepio came out of the pen. Didn't really work out too well, but I don't foresee that being the way that he's going to work during the season. And that variable does sort of change some things. So, this context there's no evidence that a good spring training leads to a great season. And there's no evidence that a bad spring training leads to a bad season. Just like for individual hitters, there's no evidence that a great spring training is going to springboard you in April. Right. Have the Cardinals hit a home run though yet? I don't know.
I don't think so.
That is so. To be fair, that's pretty crazy. It is. We are on March 6th, and the Cardinals have not hit a spring training home run yet
until 24 hours ago. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Although by the time that this comes out, Kevin, that might have changed.
Possibly.
I'll double check it as you.
Yeah. It's the Richie Palacios curse.
Paul Goldschmidt has hit a home run. They have one home run. Yeah.
Future Hall of Famer Paul Goldschmidt.
March 5th.
That's right.
March 5th must have been their first home run.
That's amazing. Locked on Cardinals. Here we go. I'm sure that's a big storyline for them. We're going to have some fun on today's program, getting into some prognostications of opening day lineups. Want to see what Evan has conjured up. But before we do that, I did notice and observe on social media that today, or the recording that we're doing today, marks the 1-year anniversary, if you can believe it or not, of the passing of Dave Wills. And I know, Ulises, we've talked about it on the program extensively, and the Rays will be honoring him with a nice ceremony and giveaway and remembrance later on this season, or early in the regular season, I should say.
It's
But,
April.
yeah,
It's very
April.
it's one of the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, but Evan, I don't know if we ever got your take or thoughts on Dave and just working in the biz. I'm sure you ran across him and encountered him once or twice, but just your thoughts on him as a broadcaster and what he meant to the organization. Ulises and I had been listening to him for years and years, and then you came to Tampa Bay, somewhat recently, but I'm sure it was pretty evident relatively quickly the impact that Dave had on the organization and the fan base.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and certainly, talked to him a couple of times, but that pales in comparison to everyone who grew up listening to him. Certainly like Andy Freed, Neil Solondz, like Trisha Whitaker, all these people who travel on the road and get to have all these memories of him. Those are people that I also extremely respect. And when they talk about him and hearing all the stories from them, that's where you get to really understand the character that Dave Wills was. Larger than life personality. His personality was the same as usually his T-shirts. So I know that he wasn't technically like ours because he came from the White Sox but he really is, the voice of the Rays. And for so many, like you guys growing up, you have fond memories, and he has those distinct calls that will forever, meld him with this franchise, and that will never be taken away. So, it's a sad day, but it's a good day to remember him. That's the kind of the bittersweet moments of all this stuff, whether you've lost someone close to you. These anniversaries, they hit different for everybody, but as long as you're feeling, I think that's the best thing, because that again reminds you of the impact they had. So certainly, my interactions were few and far between in the grand scheme of everybody else who's listening, everybody else who's worked in this organization and within the media, and especially just sort of the shock to the system it was of his passing. Was working, I believe, the Yankees game, the Yankees Rays in Tampa, and then the next day, you have to cope with this. So that was certainly difficult for so many in our area, those working for the team, around the team, and it's going to be really nice to see that his family have that moment in April of him going into the Rays Hall of Fame. Something that is definitely deserved, and certainly he'll never be forgotten. And now he's got his rightful spot there in the Trop, and hopefully in whatever the next building is there in downtown St. Pete.
I told Kevin that it would be kind of a fitting memory to do the type of Hawaiian shirt for that. For that remembrance, and I think that Rays are actually doing a giveaway, so that's pretty nice. And if you talk about all of the memories that Rays fans have today, the social media team just knocked it out of the park. So if you haven't yet watched it, it's 1 minute and 16, but they did kind of a compilation of Dave and some, not all of them, obviously, right, but some of his calls. And boys, for that whole 1:16, I had chills. It was lovely.
Yeah. And that was one of the first shrewd, amazing moves of the new ownership group with the Rays, Sternberg, Silverman and company, of let's bring in a quality radio duo, Andy Freed and Dave Wills. And it was kind of the start of good things to come. So, all right, just wanted to put that out there and acknowledge and mention that. We have a lot more to discuss, but first we have to tell you this. Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with live TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions and millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's the opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Also, Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant flurry and supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes the Locked On Network. So if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you absolutely should. Trust us on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. I'll repeat it one more time. www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Okay, Ulises and Evan. Ulises, earlier in the week, we were having a little bit of fun of, I think it was a mailbag question where we dovetailed into the subject of what an opening day lineup could look like. And we looked at the schedule and saw that Kevin Gausman likely to be on the mound for the Blue Jays against the Rays. So what would that opening day lineup look like? And we want to get Evan's thoughts on what an opening day lineup would look like against a righty, such as Gausman, but also what an opening day lineup could look like against a lefty. So extrapolate it a little bit, have some fun with it. And I have actually not looked at Evan's 1 through 9 so far. So shall we get into it? Shall we dive into it?
Let's do it. I have it here for the folks on YouTube, and you know what? That's why you're hitting that like button and that subscribe button right now.
If you're not, then what are you doing?
What are you doing, guys? You heard it from the Closky here. What are you doing? Come on, let's go. Let's look at that. Look at that.
Boom. Pencil it in. 162. Well, I guess 81, whatever. Okay, so which one do we want to start off with?
Let's go with
let's go with the right-handed pitching one,
okay.
Because that's more likely to be Gausman as the opening day.
And I guess I can say this as just a general thing in both of my lineups, which is, by the way, unheard of for the Rays, because they're always going to tinker with spots outside of maybe a couple people. So, projecting one lineup for one game of the season, this team is going to have, like, over the course of the year, 145 different lineups. But
wasn't there a year where they had like 159 different?
Yeah,
iterations?
That was nuts.
We're not getting into. We just want to try to keep it relatively short and simple. We're not getting into who's going to be the seventh inning pinch runner.
No. This is just a fun exercise.
There are I think 5 spots in this lineup where I have them both the same. Yandy being 1, Randy Arozarena being 3, Isaac Paredes being 4, Jose Siri being 8, and Jose Caballero being 9. So regardless of lefty righty, that's where I have them. Then for righties, I have Josh Lowe being my number 2 hitter. So we got Yandy 1, Josh Lowe 2 playing right field. Yandy playing first. Randy in left field. Isaac at third base. Jonathan Aranda as my DH and batting 5th. Brandon Lau playing second base at 6. Rene Pinto catching at 7. Jose Siri, Jose Caballero, center field, shortstop, respectively. That's right.
Ulises, do you remember what your lineup 1 through 9 against righties looked like? Your projected opening day slate?
Yes, I do. It was Yandy at the top of the lineup. We all had that, so I'm happy about that. Brennan Lau was actually hitting second for me against a righty.
I originally had that, and I switched it.
Yeah, Kevin actually agreed with you.
That 34% strikeout rate or whatever. Well, I guess it's not that high.
To me, I want to kind of pepper, right? Like to me, I spaced out my lineup with some of my strikeout guys.
Yeah, I can see
so
that.
I think Yandy, Josh. I just think if Yandy's going to get on base all the time, I don't want to essentially like. And I understand Brandon when he's right can hit like 30 taters, but I don't want to strike out a third of the time that Yandy gets on. You know, it's just like I want to keep the train moving a little bit. So I think that Josh, you know, you can get on base Yandy with a single, then Josh can deliver a double, and now you're in the heart of the lineup. You know, Randy, Isak, Aranda, and you know the K. Randy can strike out. You know, he'll strike out with the best of them, but you know, Isak and Aranda are mostly going to put the ball in play. So
yeah,
that you know that's sort of my thinking there.
no, I like that thinking. I could definitely be convinced, and you both I think make good points on flipping the loud to the low there. Then I had Randy batting third. We all did that, and then I had Josh Lowe being my cleanup hitter, and then Paredes at fifth. I just righty, lefty, righty,
cool.
lefty, righty.
Cool.
And then I did something unlike you both. I took it as like, hey, it's today. What would be the opening day lineup? So I did have Harold, just because he hasn't been traded. So I did have Harold, and then lastly the three: Caballero, Pinto, and Siri. I like Siri in the ninth hole. I'm a sucker for that speed demon in the ninth hole. Caballero, nothing to scoff at with the speed, so I can see that the talent there. But I just feel like with the amount of strikeouts from Siri, I wouldn't want him to be getting more opportunities to leave those guys stranded. So I would just put him ninth.
Yeah, and I will say, if you wanted to, you can actually in my lineup, you can flip Isak and Aranda if you wanted to go lefty righty. So
okay,
that's a fair complaint. I don't really put as much weight in it. It's totally. I think you're right. By the way, I don't put personally as much weight in it. I just think in today's game where most pitchers now have to get lefties and righties out because you got to stay in for three. It just but yeah, it's a good counterpoint and I think fair.
Yeah. I do like the just dropping Brandon Lau to 6. Not gonna lie, even if it is against a righty. I mean, right now, what can you really put your hand on the fire for Brandon Lau right now? I really like Josh in the second hole. I think you guys might have uncovered something there, and I dig it.
Yeah. Well, with thou who shall not be named out of the equation, I think having a quality number 2 in that spot could make sense for a Josh Lowe, especially against right-handed pitchers. And that's how I had it set up too. I actually did make a last-minute change from when we recorded the episode, the mailbag episode, because I liked Ulises' idea of having Siri at the bottom of the order and maybe jump-starting the top, assuming he gets on base, some way, somehow. He's at first and steals second, then Yandy drives him in or something like that. But I have, against right-handed pitchers, Yandy leading off, Josh Lowe batting second, Randy third, Brandon Lau fourth, Paredes fifth, Aranda sixth, Caballero seventh, Pinto eighth, and Siri ninth.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
All right.
I think it's very similar for both of it, for the three of us, but just the little changes here and there.
Yes, that is accurate. All right. We'll get to the left-handed, or the lineup against left-handed pitchers or a left-handed starter early on in the season. But first, Ulises, we have to tell the audience something very important.
Well, there's a reason why I'm wearing green and gold. It's because my USF Bulls are doing things that haven't been done in quite some time. And guess what? Okay, conference tournaments are here. That means the biggest moments in college basketball are getting closer, and you can be part of the action on PrizePicks for both men's and women's college basketball. In fact, they have this really neat thing, which is they offer injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, for example, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection will not count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. Isn't that awesome? So today, You have to download the app today and use code locked on MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's Benjamin Franklin. Okay. I will say it again. Download the app today. Use code locked on MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
All right. I'm kind of kicking myself because I could also see Harold in the lineup against right-handed pitchers, but I'll digress from that.
Wait. Don't digress. Yeah. Don't digress because I
could easily substitute or take Aranda out and then put, Harold in that spot or move him up in the order or something like that. Just not have Aranda making the opening day roster. Or being a late game sub or something. I don't know.
All I'm saying
I'm not completely sold on Jonathan Aranda is what I'm trying to say.
All I'm saying with Harold Ramirez is like, look, obviously the dude is a lefty masher, but I feel like people are not really taking into account what he did against right-handed pitching in 2023. And if for those that are like, oh, come on, how well did he hit against righties, Ulises? Well, I'll give you this. 281 average, a 329 on base, a 420 slug. That's a 749 OPS. Like,
can Jonathan Aranda surpass that?
Exactly. Like, that's a starter. We hope Jonathan Aranda can do that, but I think we're putting too much emphasis on the Harold Ramirez smashes lefty, so he can't hit a lick against righties. It's like, no, he hits righties just fine. It's just he mashes against lefties.
Yeah.
Look, the thing about the Harold Ramirez, Jonathan Aranda discourse is that you can't have both on your roster. Correct. It just is a defensive liability. It limits flexibility. In a perfect world, as I said last year, like, it would be perfect to rock with both of them, and you start Aranda against righties, you start Harold against lefties, and when you combine those numbers and splits, you got one hell of a player. Like, I mean,
you really do.
You got freaking Ted Williams out there. So
I'll say this
question, Evan. Say Josh Lowe with his hip issue. Say he's not ready for opening day, and they're comfortable with Ahmed Rosario playing middle infield, corner outfield. They're comfortable with Johnny DeLuca playing all three outfield spots. You have the other guys at their respective defensive positions. They couldn't stomach keeping Aranda and Harold on the roster to start the season.
In a short-term scenario, I think they can, right? I think with the situation you provided there, they might say, like, if Josh is going to be out, let's just say 15 days. We're going to do it out of an abundance of caution. Yeah. We're going to make sure he gets up to speed, and we're not going to rush him and whatever. Then all bets are off. You can do anything for 15 days. Sure. They're not going to, they're not going to lose sleep over, 10 or 15 days where they got to rock with a little defensive tiddlywinks and, throwing Aranda out there at second base, maybe, it's not like they can't play the field. They can put him out there. And I know Harold has worked really hard at the defensive stuff this offseason to try to prove he can have worth there. Of course, there's only so far he can go. But yeah, I think in that scenario, sure. But that's the Rays. The Rays are not going to just, unless they felt like they had to, right? They're always going to be opportunistic. They're always going to. The Rays are really good in these trades. They're really good at saying, look, this is what our price is, and we don't care if you take it or not. We'll keep this dude. Like we have, right, like the Glasnow deal. They didn't have to trade Glasnow. The demand proved that they should trade Glasnow, and it was prudent to do so. But if nobody was out there offering MLB-ready talent in return, they would have kept Glasnow. But the fact is, people were out there giving that to them, and then they were able to create a market, which then created the return.
Well, I mean,
Counterpoint: the Rays trade Harold Ramirez and Jonathan Aranda in a package to open up a wave for Curtis Mead and Junior Caminero and others on the come up.
I want to get the gauge in the room here. If Harold Ramirez isn't traded, do we all agree that Jonathan Aranda starts in AAA? Just a quick guess.
I'm going to say no.
Oh, okay. So you do see a scenario that if Harold isn't traded and he's in the 26-man roster?
I go back to the very first day of spring training that Kevin Cash and Eric Deander made it known that he has earned the opportunity to play at the big league level and not look over his shoulder and worry about staying up. They need him to work from a position of confidence, and I think they'd be starting at square zero again if you immediately send Aranda back down to AAA and say, hey, you're going to have to prove it.
That means Mead has to go down.
They're going to do the shuttle game. It's what they do best. And as of right now, if Harold is traded, I have a spot for Mead on my opening day roster. If not, Mead starts down in AAA and he's the first call up.
Well, guess what? You have him on your lineup here.
Let's look at Closky's left-handed or lineup against a left-handed pitcher opening day.
Yeah. So Yandy Diaz 1, Ahmed Rosario currently at the DH for 2, Randy Arozarena in left field at 3, Isaac Paredes third base 4, Curtis Mead second base 5, Rene Pinto sixth in catching, Josh Lowe right field 7th, Jose Siri center field 8, Jose Caballero shortstop 9. And I am going to I want to give Josh a shot to be an everyday player.
Love it. Round of applause.
And if he proves he can't hit lefties, then so be it. But all in all, I'm willing to sacrifice the 2 at bat. If you bump him down in the order, the odds say that it'll just be 2 at bats against a lefty. I'm willing to do that. And I should. I think it might be. Well, I don't know. Maybe you want to put him at 8, but I don't know. As I said, we can dissect all this all you want, but I have pretty much an entire righty lineup here except for one lefty, so it doesn't really matter where you shift them and move them. But that's where we have to get into the minutia of who are you going to replace if a lefty comes in, and are we properly balanced? I didn't think about all those variables.
I have good news because we know nobody here put Johnny DeLuca on the roster, right? So I just did a quick stats.
Well, in the starting lineup, correct?
Starting lineup, yeah. He's on. Yeah.
But hold up. I said, what are series splits against righties and lefties? Boys, he cannot hit lefty pitching. 198 average, 647 OPS. He actually does pretty well against righties. 230, 800 OPS. Do we see a scenario where Jose Siri is the starter against righties, which means he will get the bulk of the time there, and he does provide an incredible defense, and he will be there for most of the time. And then Johnny DeLuca can be the guy that faces lefties, and then you get him some at-bats and see what he can do.
If you are truly... And not you, but if the Rays truly believe that Jose Siri is an elite center fielder, let's say KK was, if you believe that that's the type of guy you got, then he's got to play most nights, because up the middle, there's no compromising it. So that's what I always said last year, right? I can accept Jose Siri striking out a million times because he has the defensive prowess to counterbalance it. But when you factor in Walls and Rayleigh and Lau, and you start throwing in 30% K guys 4 or 5 times in your lineup, now I can't stomach it, because it's just constant striking out at all different points, and you can never get the lineup motoring because you're always going to hit a bomb somewhere in your inning that is going to give you an out. It just is when you have that percentage of players who strike out all the time. So that's the key for me, because in this type of deal, And what I think they did well in the offseason is I think they kind of took out the high percentage K guys, or I shouldn't say they took them all out, but they kind of, trading Rayleigh, and Walls is on the IL right now, but I don't envision him to be an everyday player. Though they do love him. So, we'll see what happens when he comes back. I just think that's going to help them.
I don't hate your hypothesis there, Ulises. Just seeing some highlights of DeLuca, and
what do you think can go really get it?
DeLuca's going to get
off every now and again.
He's going to get playing time, and and that's what I said. Josh is going to get a day, especially with the hip thing out of the gates. Josh is probably going to get a day or two here and there. Jose Siri is not going to play every game. Even
it's turf. You got to take care of those knees, and
so when you factor in, so again, if Josh has out of the gates like 2 days off, and Jose, you give Jose Siri 1 or 2 days off. I mean, right there, that's 4 games. So,
DeLuca could get 300 plate appearances this year.
So he's going to be utilized, and especially, I think his importance will come in those late game defensive situations, because if you start, let's say, Ahmed Rosario in the corner outfield in certain games, DeLuca makes sense to be a replacement there to pull him out. In the 6th or 7th inning. So,
by the way, my order against lefties: Yandy, Rosario, Randy, Paredes, Harold, Josh Lowe, Caballero, Pinto, Siri. That's my 1 through 9.
And then again the disclaimer, which I said beforehand: if Harold Ramirez is on the roster opening day, obviously, I'm putting Harold Ramirez in my lineup against lefties. Just as of right now, I'm projecting that he won't be. But
before we end, to bring this thing full circle, hearkening back to Dave Wills. Aside from Dave, Evan, who is your all-time favorite sports broadcaster? Be it radio, television, pigeon. I don't know. But who's your favorite sports broadcaster that you emulated and revered, I guess, growing up?
I don't know if I truly emulated anybody, but I was a Mets fan growing up. So really Gary Cohen, Howie Rose, those were kind of my voices. Keith Hernandez is hilarious. Certainly don't want to, in some degree, emulate some of the things he does on air, but he's good entertainment. Ron Darling is fantastic. You see him on National Work all the time, but that's sort of my bias. I think, to me, Gary Cohen is a great balance of really good at his job, but will be critical of the team on the broadcast. That's for me, and maybe that's a New Yorker. I mean, you gotta say it like it is sometimes, and you can't sugarcoat the bad things. And I'm very anti-homerism, so that's just and I think the Rays broadcast team is actually really good at that too, of calling to light certain things that they don't agree with, or things that are it's not working and things are going badly. A player makes a mistake. I do appreciate that the Rays aren't like the White Sox and I forget off the top of my head who's the
Hawk Harrelson.
Thank you, Hawk Harrelson. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's just my thing. So that's what I kind of emulate is trying to stay down the middle with a slight lean to your teams, depending on what your job is, and call it like you see it.
I like it. All right. We have another episode with Mr. Closky on Friday, so stay tuned for that. Hope you all enjoy, stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.